Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today, Bonnie. Please tell us your full name and the position you hold currently.
My full name is Bonnie Bonnabelle Laws Polly.
Okay.
I am a deacon in the Episcopal Church, and I am on staff at Christ Church Episcopal in Las Vegas, Nevada. I am also employed by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and I am a jail chaplain at the Clark County Detention Center, a position that I have held for 30 years.
Please tell us briefly where you were born and a little bit about your family of origin and where you grew up.
I was born in Lake Charles, Louisiana, on February the 8th, 1939. My father was a lawyer, and my mother was very, very involved in social concerns issues in our small town. Our family was what I would say probably pretty dysfunctional, although in that day and time we didn't know what that meant. And I have an older brother, 13 months older than I am, and we were raised in a very loving family, although we did have our issues.
What religion, if any, were you raised in?
My brother and I went to the Episcopal Church because when my brother was about 1 year old and I was pretty much almost here, my mother announced to my father that she would not have me until my father had my brother baptized.
I suppose she was planning on keeping her legs crossed.
So my father ran into the Episcopal minister on the street in downtown Lake Charles and asked him if he would baptize his son. He baptized Brock, and once I entered the world, I was baptized. So we were baptized in the Episcopal Church, and Brock and I were raised in the Episcopal Church.
So you were regular attendees and went to their religious school and all that?
We did not go to a religious school.
Even just like a Sunday school?
But we did go to Sunday church, and we were very involved in Sunday school. And as we grew, we were more involved in youth activities. We did not go to church as a family, however.
Your parents didn't go with you?
My parents did not go to church.
You mentioned in the letter you sent me that you had a woman who took care of you as a child.
Yes.
Did she take you?
No, she did not. My Wees, who really raised me, was I'm not real sure what denomination Wees was, but she was very involved in her church.
Maybe Southern Baptist.
Or probably maybe Church of Christ.
Do you have any post-secondary education, and if so, what did you study and where?
Yes, I attended the University of Colorado for 2 years, and I was studying sociology. And once David and I married, after 2 years in college, I dropped out of the University of Colorado and entered business school and completed business school, and then went to work in a dental office, running the front desk of the dental office, and that is where I got involved in dentistry, and ended up going back and being certified as a dental assistant, and worked as a dental assistant for 25 years, and just loved my work. I loved dentistry. I loved dental assisting.
I'm very interested in calling. I feel like I was called to do these interviews. But it's not something that my faith tradition talks about. We don't we don't use the word calling.
Uh-huh.
So I'm hoping that I think you were called to the ministry.
Yes.
What I'd like you to do is describe briefly how your calling happened and what you thought and felt at that time, like leading up to it and then through the process.
And it was probably when I was about 34, 35 years old, and I really had hit a low ebb in my life. I am married. I was married at that time. Have 3 wonderful children, 3 sons, and but life was just not a very happy time for me. My husband David is alcoholic. He's recovering. Has been recovering since 1982, and
Coming up on 30 years.
yes, and at that time in my life, he was actively drinking, which of course made our lives pretty bizarre and pretty miserable and pretty difficult. I believe that it was, and it was at that time that I think subconsciously I just surrendered and gave it all to God, although at that time I really didn't know that's what I was doing, but that is in fact what I was doing. And after quite a, in fact, the matter, it was on a New Year's Eve, and I can't really give you the date it was, but it was
On New Year's Eve.
it was on a New Year's Eve, and we had gone to a party, and both of us had had too much to drink, and he was too drunk to drive home, and I was also too drunk to drive home, and so I decided that I wasn't going to go with him, that I would walk home, which I did, and it was quite a ways to walk. However, I did make myself home. I did make my way home, and the next morning, when I woke up, I knew I didn't really know what was going to happen in my life, but I just knew that it was going to be okay, and it was from that point on that things just began to change.
How so?
In my relationship with God. I was involved in the church prior to that time. However, I was very superficially involved, and at that time I began to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I got involved in a group called the Edge of Adventure, and the Edge of Adventure was a 13-week program that we experimentally surrendered our lives to Christ with the expectation of seeing what would happen. And the whole idea was at the end of the 13 weeks, we would be either really involved with Christ in our lives, or we could just close the book. From the very beginning, from the very first night of the class, I got very involved, and I believe that that was the beginning of the surrender process.
When you were in that 13-week program, the Edge of Adventure, was it during those 13 weeks that you knew that you were called to the ministry?
Not that early on.
How much later was it?
We finished that particular book. Then we went on to another book, which was called Living the Adventure, which was interesting, but as I remember, didn't have too much bearing, although it was part of the process. But it was the third book that we did, which was called A Passionate People, and all of these books were all written by the same people. And in the Passionate People,
what church was it? This church?
Yes, it all happened outside of Christ Church,
Okay.
or with it. It was education within Christ Church, or really, the community coming together and seeking seeking a relationship with Christ. But it was the Passionate People, which was a book that now, the first book, The Edge of Adventure, introduced us to life with Jesus. The second book gave us more information in how we could live the life with Jesus. And the third book was now we are Christians, and now we must go out and serve. And each week we were to do.
So was it largely about finding your particular path to service?
I think probably that was the idea, although that wasn't said.
It wasn't expressed.
But each week we were given an assignment, and one week we were given an assignment that we were to go to minister with someone and share our Christian walk with this person.
So it was about proselytizing.
No, it wasn't about proselytizing. It was about just serving Jesus Christ, or as Christian people. We did not proselytize. We did not invite these people to come to our church. We just, as individual people, went out and shared why Jesus was important to us. And the catch of this was that we really could not know the person, so we couldn't go to family or friends.
So did you door knock it, or what did you do?
No, we needed to find somebody to go and visit, and I can remember that I had no idea, no clue who I was going to go see.
Okay.
And at that time in my life, I had a placement service for the dental community in our area, in our community here in Las Vegas. And I placed dental assistants and other dental auxiliary in offices. It was a type of a placement service.
A temporary
placement service. And I did this because I love dentistry, and it would also give me opportunity to work in offices temporarily. At that time, of course, I had 3 children, which I was very involved with, so I didn't want to work full time, but I did want to stay involved. So this one morning, the phone rang. That's something. The phone rang, and it was a dental office, and they asked me if I could find a replacement for their assistant. And I had placed this person in the office, but I did not know her other than placing her in the position. So I just said, well, does Carol have the flu, or how long is she going to be out, or what's the situation? And the person said to me, and I can't remember whether it was the dentist or the dental assistant, and that really doesn't matter. But she said, didn't you hear what happened? And I said, no, I did not hear what happened. And they said, well, Carol shot and killed her husband last night.
Oh my.
And I said, oh my goodness. And I knew at that moment
that she was the person.
That she was the person that I had to go and see. What was the real dilemma about all of this was Carol happened to have killed a nephew of the sheriff of Clark County at that time.
Her husband was a nephew.
And I just knew.
It's even worse. It's even worse than just murder. You murdered someone a cop loves.
I just knew that there was going to be no way that I was going to be able to see this person, because I just had a vision that they had just kind of put her under the jail. But the Lord would not let me go. He would not let me alone. And he continued to tell me that I was to go and see her. And so I decided I better do something. So I called where she would be being held. And now I knew nothing about jails at that time in my life. And but I did call and find out if it would be possible to come and visit her. And I called the number, and I told them that Carol, I can't even remember Carol's last name at this time. Carol Lamb was her name, or is her name. I said, she's been booked.
She's still in prison?
No, she's out now. She's been booked, and may I please come? I'd like to visit her. And how can I go about that? And I figured at that time they'd say, well, you can. Well, they said to me, come on down. And I said, now? And they said, that's what we said, lady. And so I got in the car, and I went downtown, and I went up to the window where you sign in to visit people. And I figured then that would be enough to get me off the hook for doing this. And I was just sure that there would be lots of people that had already seen her, and there was nobody. Nobody had signed in to see her. So I signed in, and then waiting to find out now what do I do now. The man on the other side of the window said, you just go over across the way to that door, and he showed me pointed to the door. He said, you just listen for the buzz, and you just open the door and you go in. And I said, okay. So I went across the way and listened for the buzz, and the door opened, and I went in, and the door shut. And I thought, oh my goodness, they're gonna forget that I'm in here. And then I waited for whatever else was gonna happen. And where I was in a visiting room with the glass in between, with the phones
like
on either side of the glass. And I waited, and I began to hear clanking and doors shutting and slamming, and it wasn't long at all that Carol appeared on the other side of one of the glass petitions, and we sat down, and she picked up the phone, and I picked up the phone, and she said, Bonnie Polly, what are you doing here? And I thought, what am I doing here? And I said to her, I am here because I heard about what happened, and I'm here because I care about you, and I wanted to let you know that. And so we were allowed to visit. I bet we were together an hour and a half, and no one bothered us. No one took her away. And we talked, and we began a real relationship. And I followed Carol from that point on. Carol did go to prison. She spent I think it was about 8 years in women's prison here in Nevada. And I kept in touch with her, and was very, it was just a beginning. It was a beginning. After that point,